Hello, and welcome to another wonderful Wired Wednesday. My name is Ashley, and today's topic is Android or Apple. What's the difference? So, the first thing we're going to talk about is the operating systems. So, to start with, Apple runs on an operating system called iOS. So, as you notice, Apple products will be called i something. So, iPad, iPod, iPhone. So, it just means I, and then OS means operating system. And then they go through the numbers of which operating system they're on. Android devices run on an Android operating system. They're typically named after candy, like a lollipop or something like that. Apple iOS will only run on Apple devices, whereas Android is more open and runs on many different devices, such as Samsung, Google, LG, TCL, Motorola, and more. Apple's App Store is just called the App Store, whereas Android's App Store is called the Google Play Store. Android devices have a back button, whereas Apple devices allow you to look at the apps and screens like Pages and swipe through your screens to go where you want to go. Android phones allow you more control over your system and your apps. Apple is pretty set with what you get is what you get. So when you look at the background of an Apple phone, you'll see that like moving your apps around your phone to kind of like customize it is a little more difficult. Things kind of just go and they stay in their spots. Whereas with Android, you can move your apps all the way around your phone and move them in different spots, and you can kind of customize it to the way you want it. Apple phones have a sleek beauty to them, whereas Android smartphones come from a variety of companies. So they can go from being very sleek to bulky and that kind of thing as well. So you can have a phone, for example, from one company that's like a very cheap phone for Android, but it still runs the Android operating system on it, but it's clunky and it's kind of, boring looking and things like that. And then you have something that's more expensive, like maybe like a Samsung phone, and it'll look very sleek and very well put together. So Android allows that, allows their operating system to work on many different devices, whereas Apple is just Apple, and Apple has a distinct look to it. So you know an Apple phone when you see it. An iPhone is an iPhone, so prices will always portray that. So iPhones are typically more expensive phones, and Apple goes for more of a luxury market. Android can be expensive, but you have more choice as to what you want and what you want for your price point. So one thing I find is good to go get reviews. So if you use something like the Consumer Reports, and you can check up different phones to see where they fall on the scale, because there's such a wide variety of Android phones that it's important to see like what you want for your price and what your price point is, and then you can go from there and decide. Whereas Apple is kind of just, this is Apple. They might have the last couple of years worth of Apple phones that are still on maybe like their website or something like that, or you can get a good deal on it through Rogers or Telus or Bell or something like that. But for the most part, Apple is just, that's the Apple phone. It's this much money. That's that. So Apple has their own apps for basically everything. So they would have like Apple TV, Apple Music, iBooks, etc. So these would just be on the actual Apple device themselves, and they're not interchangeable with anything else. So whereas with Android, you can have the Android apps on any Android device. So any of the phones I was talking about earlier, you can get them on those as well. So the only thing is, though, is that you can't buy an Amazon ebook from the Kindle app and then use it on your Apple device. Or if you were to buy a Google Play movie, you can't get Google Play movies on your Apple device. So you can't play that. So Apple's kind of very restricted in the sense that you can only play their stuff on their phones and their devices, and that's it. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, say if you have your Apple phone and you had iTunes and you have all this music that you've downloaded and you've paid for, so that music is only available on Apple phones. So it's not transferable with you. So if you go to move to an Android phone after you've had an Apple device, that music is non-transferable. So you've paid for this music that you have to listen to on an Apple device, and that's the only way you can listen to it. So next I'm going to talk about security. So I've had people say to me that Apple devices can't get viruses. That's not true. They can get viruses. They're just less likely to get viruses. So Apple has full control over their phones, whereas Android, because there are so many different types of phones, Android doesn't really have control over their phones. So it's really up to the phone companies in that sense. So Apple will have regular updates that will update things like security and privacy and things like that. And you can do this, as it goes along. You can set your phone to just do it overnight or that kind of thing. Same goes for Android as well. It just depends on if that phone company releases that update. So that being said, Apple does have more control over their phones. And they can manufacture the updates and patches because they only have one kind of phone, one kind of software to deal with. Whereas with Android, there's many different kinds of software. So it's really being left up to the phone companies to release the proper updates on time and that kind of thing as well. One of the issues I've read about online is that Apple updates can cause Wi-Fi problems. So Wi-Fi problems with the actual device where you have to reset your Wi-Fi. Android doesn't typically have this issue. Apple, though, is typically more secure than Android because Apple's apps in their app store, they actually look at them to see what they're all about and if they have any security issues. Android is a little more iffy about their app store and the other apps they allow into their store as well. Next, I'm going to talk about cameras. So cameras can vary widely on Android devices because, as I mentioned earlier, they're all at different price points and they're by different companies. So for example, right now I have a Google Pixel 3 XL. My camera on this phone is phenomenal. However, the phone I had before this was a Motorola phone and it wasn't very good at all. The camera was terrible. But for the Apple devices, they also have great cameras and they keep making their cameras better and better. So once again, you're getting with Android devices, you can have many different kinds of cameras and all types of, from being very good quality to very poor quality. And with Apple, it has a consistency to it as well. So my suggestion is the higher the megapixels that you can get in your camera for your phone, that's the better off you'll be. They'll take the best pictures and that kind of thing. But once again, do keep in mind that Android varies widely. So from great all the way down to not so great. So next I'm going to talk about charger cables. So for Apple, the Apple charging cable is called the Lightning cord or Lightning cable. Apple has put software into their phones, so you can't use third-party cables. So what I mean by third-party, it means that you go into a source store and you can buy a cable that's for Apple, but it's not by Apple. However, with Android devices, you can use those cables interchangeably. So you could go to the source and buy a Samsung cable that's not necessarily by Samsung, and it's cheaper than buying the actual brand name cord. So these are things that you can do with Android because once again, the devices vary so widely that Apple has wants to make money off their cords, so they do not allow you to use third-party cords in the charging process. It could also be because sometimes the third-party cords may not have as much juice, for example, as something from Apple, so Apple just wants you to have that full charging experience as well. So in the end, it comes down to what price point and what you're looking for in a phone. Once again, both operating systems have a lot to offer. It just depends on what you're looking for. My personal preference is Android. I've had Apple phones in the past, but I just prefer Android because I feel like I can personalize my experience more. You'll find that people have their personal preferences. They're normally very strongly Apple or very strongly Android. This is the end of Android or Apple. What's the difference? If you'd like to reach out for tech help, you can email me at librarytech@thebluemountains.ca. Have a great day.